welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the Samarian Sunset Palette from Adept Cosmetics. I'm going to be showing you some swatches, some swatch comparisons, and 4 looks. When I first saw this color story, I was absolutely smitten by it. It is such a beautiful fall color story. Now this palette is Star Trek themed, but I've never watched Star Trek, so I can't really speak on how well this represents what it's supposed to represent. There's 10 shimmer shadows, some really beautiful extra special multi-chromes. There are varying textures, which I think you could just tell from the way they look in the pan, but as well as from the live swatches. On their website, it says that the formula is very creamy and will need to be kept in a cool, dry place, and that these shimmers will apply the best with your fingers. And then it says some shades are a gel cream mixture, not a typical powder eyeshadow, and may move around when in transit or when you touch it. This is normal. So this is something that I didn't know before going in and buying the palette, so I'm really curious to try the shadows that are this formula. It doesn't specify exactly which shades, which I really wish it would have said exactly which shades are this gel formula. I think I could kind of guess which ones. Based off of just touch, I think it's Packlet, Obsidian Order, Praxis, and USS Defiant. And I will be talking about some of the textures more during the tutorials. And then of course, I'm going to be giving you some of my thoughts. So let's get right into the video. Taking Tanagra right onto my crease, and I'm just gonna pack it down first to the outer corner as well. Just first laying it down. Have no idea what shimmers I'm gonna use yet, but definitely feel like I'm gravitating towards certain shades, and then going in with Jalad right in there to blend that out. And it looks like it doesn't really want to blend out because it's probably just stuck down, so I'm going to go back in with that green, and I'm just going to work it in circular motions. I really want to try out all the different shimmer formulas that are in here. Seems to be kind of the usual couple of different formulas, but there's a couple of really just wet feeling shades, and then the shade Packlet just felt really sticky, so I'm a little bit concerned about some of these with my hooded eyes, honestly. LAL, and missing my brush just a tad, and I'm gonna pop that onto the like halfway on the lid and onto the outer corner, and then next to that I'm gonna go in with Risa. I didn't miss my brush, I'm just gonna go straight in. That is super pretty iridescent kind of shade. That is so pretty. Very shiny. So that's what these two look like next to each other. So pretty. So one is a little bit orangey and the other is pinky, essentially. Here's the first finished look. To the second look, taking Delta Quadrant, and I'm just going to pack that on my lid and then into my crease just a little bit, and just packing on more. I do feel like, so far from what I can tell, these mats feel a bit different from some other mats I have tried from Adept, and I'm just going to take it a little bit right here, just a tiny bit. I'm taking Positronic Net, and I'm going to use that right in the crease to help blend this out. And then on the outer corner as well, I'm probably going to end up going in with Delta Quadrant as well, just to bring in a bit more. Just kind of really want to bring it up and smoke it out. Just like that. Really get it blended. I think that's pretty good. So next I really want to go in with USS Defiant. I kind of want to go in with my fingers. So I'm actually going to use my pinky. And the shade is a little bit sticky. Here's what that looks like. Here's Zor-El in comparison. I thought they might be a little bit similar, but also the formula is pretty different. So I'm just taking that on the lid. I feel like this one's not as shiny as I was hoping, but that looks so pretty layered over the red. It's like an actual sunset kind of eye look here. So beautiful. Onto the third look, I'm going in with a dark mock, and I'm going to create basically a halo eye. So I'm just popping it onto the inner and outer corners, just really packing it on. Going in with a Jalad right into the crease. And I'm just gonna blend the edges of all of this. I feel like I wish this was deeper. It just doesn't really go deep enough. Like if there was a nice kind of neutral, super deep brown, so I could really deepen up any of these looks, I think that would be ideal, especially because there's some dark shimmers in here. So it kind of feels a little bit like there's something missing. I'm just gonna take like a clean air-ish brush and go around the edges. And then I think I'm gonna use my finger, and I really wanna do something in the center of my lids. I think I'm gonna go in with actually the hollow shade. Ooh, this one picks up quite a bit easily, and it looks like it's the kind of shadow that might be, if you pick up too much, it might look a little like thicker on the lid, essentially like accentuating skin texture. So I'm trying to really make sure I'm smoothing it out on the lid. But that looks really pretty, and I love the way it looks with this green. I feel like they go kind of hand in hand. I'm just going to bring that up a little bit more, and again, just really rubbing it in. Well, actually more like tapping it in. And that was so, so pretty. I can definitely see the hollow, but I think this lighting is not really ideal for the hollow. So I'm going to show you with a flash. I'm taking Tanagra again, and I'm going to put that right into the inner crease, inner half of the crease. And I'm going to stop about halfway in. And then same brush, I'm just wiping it off. I'm going to go in with Delta Quadrant. And it's going to go into the outer portion here. Ooh, that's already looking a little Christmassy and flaggy. But that's okay. We're gonna use the shimmers and really just layer it up here with shimmers. So I'm just blending that out and up, and I don't want to blend it too much into the green. I just kind of want them to touch, gingerly touch, and then taking this underneath my lower lash line just to connect it. I feel like these mats are taking definitely a bit more building up, so you can kind of get, you know, just different depths with them, which is nice, but I just wish that there was a little bit more depth, even more so actually. So I really want to use Pack Lead, but it's, when I was swatching it, it literally feels squishy, and I just know that that's not going to go over well on my lid, unfortunately, even though it's such a beautiful shade. So I'm just gonna use it as my inner corner highlight. I would like to use it on the lid, but I'm not sure how that's gonna go. Next, I'm picking up Obsidian Order, and this one was very thick feeling, and that's not really applying. Picked up a bit more. It's kind of picking up chunky, and it's like just wiping off my brush. It does not want to stay on this brush. Maybe I need a different brush. Just trying to put this on. I don't know, that just doesn't look like I was imagining it to. So I'm going to take a flat brush. I might actually need to go in with a silicone tip applicator. Like, I don't know, it's just not really picking up. That's definitely better though, this flatter brush. But do you see how this is a pretty dark kind of shimmer shade, and I just don't feel like there's an equivalent depth matte shadow to really use this with, and this is definitely not the kind of shimmer shade I would really reach for. It's fall, but not really like, I don't know, I just don't feel like this formula. Do you see? It looks really weird and really patchy. I'm just gonna go in my finger. It might have to be a kind of shade you use with your finger, but even then, I don't know about this. It's better, but that was a really weird experience. I'm gonna take Positronic Net and just like blend it out here. Picking up Far Point, and I'm gonna pop that right here. Now this one seems like more of like a, you know, shimmer shadow that's not really finicky like the one I just used, and I'm just tapping that on. I did not miss my brush. I probably should have, but it seems like it's okay. I only have a little bit of fallout, especially from that other shade, the darker shade. Picking up Trill on this small brush, and it's very squishy in the pan. It is like very, very squishy, so probably not gonna put it anywhere near my HUD and anywhere where it might possibly crease. That looks so pretty underneath the lower lash line though. I feel like it's gonna be safe here. Hopefully it doesn't transfer everywhere. I do plan on using this palette when I go into the office in the next couple of days. So I'm gonna try to use it and wear test it and see how these wear, because I'm definitely a bit skeptical, but I will keep you updated towards the end of the video. And I'm taking Mo, M-O-G-H, the very first shade, and I'm actually just gonna tap it right in the center. Just tapping it, essentially creating like a little highlight in there and just layering everything. There's just about like almost every shimmer in the palette on this look. So I also used this palette off camera for 2 other looks. So I have now done 6 total looks with this palette, and I definitely feel like I have a pretty good idea on what this palette has to offer and how I feel about it. First and foremost, I love the color story. It is definitely giving very much fall for me due to the timing that this was released and because I'm not familiar with Star Trek. I think color story wise, I am missing at least one deeper matte shadow, whether that would be a really, really dark, beautiful green or a really dark brown, preferably neutral, so that it could mix in really nicely with some of these other tones, the red, the green, and then this olive as well. So I will have to pair this palette with other palettes to really achieve the kinds of looks that I usually gravitate to, which pretty much 99% of the time include a deepening up shade. So I feel like the mattes for me are a little bit lacking. They are quite buildable, so I think that makes them very user-friendly, because this way you get to have the option of building up while they are buildable, and I do tend to gravitate towards more buildable formulas these days. I did experience a bit of sticking down every time I use them, so blending them out was a little bit harder, and I just feel like I've tried so many matte formulas at this point, so I really, really know exactly what I like. Now let's talk about the shimmer shadows. I'm going to first talk about these 2 black-based multi-chromes. I think it's kind of interesting that these 2 are pretty similar to each other. I think the biggest difference between them is really the shift. The formula on these is very interesting, not something that I have experienced with Adept previously. They just pick up in a very thick kind of layer, and I think you could see from the swatches. And when I wipe it off, do you see how it wipes off kind of like in small little flakes? And that was the issue I ran into when I try to apply these with a brush, which I usually apply with a finger anyway, so it doesn't really bother me too much that they didn't apply well with a brush, but they just seem to kind of be separating. It's almost like the pigment was separating from whatever the binder is in here. So I will have to try these two shades out a little bit more, though not really something I gravitate towards these days. So I will probably use this on the outer corner or like over an eyeshadow wing, not necessarily just all over the lid. It's not really my style anymore. So I'm not really worried about creasing with these, though I do think that these might be prone to creasing just because how creamy they are. Now I wore Packlet and USS Defiant, which is the shades that I wear tested, and I definitely had some creasing and a little bit of actually the shadow disappearing from my lid, and that was probably over the course of almost 12 hours of wear, though I did notice the creasing pretty much around maybe the 3 or 4 hour mark. And it's not really a big deal to me as long as I can blend it out, but because there was a little bit of disintegration, it did make it a little bit trickier because the shadow literally was kind of disappearing. And I didn't use any sort of tacky primer because in my experience with any shimmer shadows that are a little bit too emollient, a tacky primer, even though it dries down, it might just not mesh well with the whatever the formula that is almost creamy in the shadows is, so I actually get more creasing. So that's why I wanted to try them on top of like a set eyeshadow base with mattes on top, so really just no oil should be seeping through at all to mix with these shadows, but I still had a little bit of creasing. So I think I just have to be careful with the placement of these on my lid, though I do want to try them out with a tacky primer next time. And then the second day I wore Farpoint, and I did not have like any creasing, and I put it over the Fairly Pixie Epoxy, and I think that just has to do with the formulation. Again, some of these are a little bit creamier than others, so those are probably going to be more likely to crease, while this one just feels, while it feels really, really nice and silky smooth, it doesn't feel creamy. It's not squishy. It just feels like a nice sparkly kind of shimmer formula. So I'm not surprised that it didn't crease on me, but it did have help from the Fairly Pixie Epoxy. So I think it's kind of like a mixed bag for me in terms of creasing. If you don't have creasing issues, or if you have deep set eyes, I think you're going to be totally fine with these. But if you have hooded oily lids and you tend to have creasing problems, you might experience creasing issues with these, so keep that in mind. I think I've just come to terms with that we're just going to keep seeing brands release these kinds of squishier, more emollient kind of formulas, because they do swatch really well and they do look really beautiful, but they don't necessarily work for everyone because of the formulation, because everyone's lids are so different. Though I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't have any creasing issues with any of these kind of more emollient formulas from indie brands, but I definitely have to be a lot more careful with these kinds of formulas than some of the kind of other more standard formulas that are still really beautiful, still really shiny, but a little bit drier, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I really do hope that, and this is like a general statement, not just Adept Cosmetics, but just in general, I've noticed there's definitely a theme going on, and I wish I didn't have oily lids. I think Millie probably 10 years ago would have had no issues with these, but Millie nowadays, it's crease city, and I've just had to learn my way around it. I'm glad that this palette wasn't more expensive than it is. I think the price is very fair for just the amount of very special, beautiful shadows you're getting in here, because honestly, I really love these shadows in here, and I think they're very special. There's some that you can easily dupe, like these two shades especially, but there's some shadows in here. USS Defiant, Packlet, I mean, a hollow shadow, of course, is a very, very special. Trill, Risa, Farpoint, and Mauve, all very, very special, and I could see myself really wanting to dip into them, but I just have to be a little bit mindful and kind of jump through a little bit of hoops to make sure that they don't crease. So I'm really enjoying the shimmers in here. I just have to be careful how I use them, where I use them on the lids, and then for the mattes, I'll probably be reaching and dipping into some other palettes. So I hope that these thoughts on the palette are helpful to you in making a decision if you want to pick this palette up or not, and let me know in the comments below if you did pick it up, what you think of it. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.